Hey everybody, Nick Maxwell here. In my last video, I explained that I was going to be switching to XL Power helicopters and fly them going forward. That was a pretty quick, short video, just kind of saying, okay, this is what we're changing to. But as you all know, I really like talking about helicopters and fairly technically oriented with tuning and getting them flying the way that I like. So now, here's a little bit longer video, so sit back, grab a beer, let's chat about this new XL Power Specter V2. So first off, one of the things that really caught my eye was how compact, light, and simple the helicopter looked. I think XL Power has done a great job with figuring out functionality, simplicity, and keeping things robust so that they're going to work day in and day out. I fly roughly 800 to 1,200 flights a year, depending on if there's contests, something like that. But I absolutely hate changing and wrenching on helicopters. Thrust bearings, belts, stuff like that, wear items, it's normal, you got to do it. But when you have to do it, you want to be able to do it where you take the helicopter apart, put it back together, and it flies exactly the same, just with the new parts. So one of the biggest things was the drivetrain. Obviously, a quiet, smooth helicopter is going to fly better. And the reason why is a loud, noisy drivetrain is probably going to send vibrations through the entire mechanics. And so the smoother everything is, the better your flight control system is going to work, and the closer you can tune something. So XL Power has gone with a really wide belt and a really large tail pulley, which is real smooth. It's quiet. It doesn't skip. And then it's got a couple little idlers back in the frames, and then straight back to the tail. It's got a nice sized pulley on the tail shaft. It fits real well on the tail shaft. It's a 6mm tail shaft, so you've got real good fit in the bearings and the tail case. They're spread wide apart, so you've got good support. And then one thing that they've done that I think is really smart is instead of running like a pulley or something to try to wrap the belt around the pulley, what they've done is they've put a little, I guess you call it an idler, that sits on top of the pulley and actually holds the belt on top of that. And the distance, it's not constantly pushing down on it, but it keeps it so as that belt tries to skip in the tail and move up around the belt, it keeps it down. So you really almost can't skip the tail belt on this thing. The other thing that I've noticed is because everything is so smooth and direct and low parts count, it's very free. So when you spin the head, everything's free. It spins for a long time. It makes auto rotations great. So that was a pretty key point. The other point is a nice big, tall, and wide main gear. It's super smooth, lots of different gear ratio options, and so you can fit just about any motor, whatever you want in there, and it's going to run smooth and quiet, and it's incredibly strong. And all of this is all mounted through a through bolt through the pulley, and with one bolt and 3 ball links, you can take your entire rotor head off and maintain whatever you need to. The one-way unit has a Sprague bearing in there and is supported by 2 radials, and it's, like I said, it's very smooth. One of the most important things on my list after the drivetrain would have to be control geometry. It is entirely controlling how your helicopter flies. The XL Power has got a really good servo layout. All the servos are vertical with a spline down. So you've got really good support. So the helicopter, as load on the swash plate, you're not sitting there flexing a servo. You got a nice wide base that it mounts to. And then you've got nice long servo rods, and then a very wide swash plate, and then wide ID into the blade grips. This is really important because specifically for my flying style, I fly big and fast, and I like to flip into maneuvers. And you need overhead cyclic to do that. As you push your cyclic stick forward at full pitch or negative pitch, a lot of times you'll notice that your swash plate either comes down, or as you tilt it over and you go up and down on your collective, it actually does not hold full collective. Say neutral's here, as you go up it reduces, as you go down it reduces a little bit. Good control geometry and everything being large and wide helps with that as you start to rotate things. The next thing is that it does have swash drivers here. So if you do need to adjust phasing, you've got a really nice rigid system, so that when you do rolls and high energy stuff, you're not getting any flexing in there, changing the input to your rotor head, which keeps it flying straight. If you want a helicopter to roll straight, that's a very important thing. It also has a really rigid anti-rotation, so that way your swash plate stays true. Talk a little bit more about this in some other videos soon with some setup, but I can actually get positive and negative 14 degrees collective, and up and back and right and left 11 degrees cyclic, throughout the entire control range, and without any interaction, by using Fatava's detail swash plate setup. Kind of going forward, you'll notice the helicopter is really simple. It's got a tray for the ESC, and then the tray underneath it is for the gyro, and then you go to the transmission box and then in the tail boom mount. The gyro is mounted right here, and it's incredibly easy to get to stuff. If you have a gyro you need to plug into it, it's easy to get to. If you have a gyro that's wireless like the CGY 760, set it up once, put it all in there. I think probably the most notable thing is how easy it is to mount and change servos. They're all mounted externally here. Nothing's buried in the frames, and your wires just run straight to the flight control unit. Super easy. I changed the tail servo the other day in about 4 minutes. So that was pretty awesome. In terms of ESC stuff, you've got this nice big tray. Obviously, the Scorpion ESC is pretty small. I'm using a 200 amp ESC, and it uses hardly any of the tray. CG-wise, everything comes out really, really well with the canopy on. This is actually the CG location with the battery. Then going down further, you've got your battery tray. As most of you know, in the past, I have not really liked removable battery trays. I've always been somebody that really likes the fixed straps, and on every flight, I take the strap off and put it back on there. But with the way that XL Power did this, it's supported really well at the sides of the frames, and it runs in the rails, aluminum rails, that are screwed to the carbon frame. So the battery is real tight, it's rigid, and it's got a really nice system here that you just pull and your battery comes out and your battery goes in. You can put it either in from the back or the front, and it's got a little finger pull handle on the back if you like to use that. I guess that they're also coming out with, there's an extra hole here with a mount that actually you can solder your batteries and screw those to, and you'll be able to just plug your battery in from the back, and your whole helicopter will arm and be ready to go. You don't even have to take the canopy off. Speaking of canopy, there are breakaway tabs for the canopy mounts. That's great. If you do have a bad crash, it's going to potentially save your canopy, number one, and number two, it's going to save your frames. It's awesome because even in small little crashes, you don't want to have to be changing your frames just because your canopy mount broke. Canopy is well supported here on a damper, and there's 4 supports here. And what I've been doing for the last month is actually just running the pins in the back. I've not been putting the pins in the front, and it seems to work just fine. Moving back down the helicopter, you'll notice that all the servos are located right here, and then the tail transmission is incredibly direct right back to the tail. There's no intermediary gear ratios, no pulleys, no gear train. Go straight back there. It's a really wide thickness boom, and it's well supported. So you'll notice the boom support clamps aren't real close together. They're really far apart, which allows that boom to be mounted real rigid into the frames. The tail rotor, it's pretty straightforward. The pitchfork, everything is super free and easy. Didn't even have to size a link. So I was pretty happy with that. The way that the tail case and everything mounts, it's incredibly easy to service. So you can actually just with one set screw, take the entire tail shaft out. You've got your pulley and everything. If you need to change your tail shaft bearings, the bearing is held in from the outside with 2 screws. So if you need to add shims, if you need to change that tail shaft bearing, within a matter of minutes, you can have the bearing out, add a shim, all your play's gone. Your tail rotor push rod is carbon and rides in 2 guides and is well supported. And you just JB weld or epoxy or whatever your choice of glue is the 2 ends on. It's all cut to the right sizes and adjustable. The tear ratio on this one, I'm running, I believe it's 475, and with 105 tail blades at 2200 head speed. That seems like a great combination. Tail holds good, gains exactly 50% in the CGY 760, and the endpoints are exactly 100 and 100. So you cannot get any closer to defaults on a tail rotor system. Just take it off and fly it. The head is a pinch head, so you put the Jesus bolt through and then the 2 pinch bolts, which are great, keeps the head block on straight. The head, really not too much to talk about other than it just works great. I'm using the default dampeners. These dampers in the head now are the plastic with the 2 O-rings on each side. I think the stock ones are 80 durometer. And just the head goes together straightforward, super smooth. The head axle goes on the grip bearings, super easy. Take it off, put it back on, and it's been pretty darn flawless. Running the inside hole on the grip arms. There are 2 options there. So if you are using other flybarless units, you can change that a little bit. I tend to run the inside one. The closer that the swash plate to the blade grip is a 1-to-1 ratio, the less differential you're going to have in your top and bottom pitch. So that is also another real nice factor about this is you run those inside holes, you get a lot of overhead cyclic, and also your differential is going to be less as you throw the swash plate up and down. So right now with this setup, I have negative 3%, so 3% less on the top end than the bottom. And that just all is going to depend on what your total travel is. Going to the blade grips, they now have these little steel inserts, and the kit does come with spacers for 12 and 14 millimeter blades. So you're set there. They work super good. Revo blades slide right in, tighten up. Great for blade stops, anything like that. I think that pretty much wraps up the rotor head. So kind of going to the tuning and the flying and the feel. One thing that I've noticed, the helicopter is incredibly axial. I believe that is because the CG is quite high, the battery's high, the motor's high, the ESC's high, all the servos are high. I have not actually CG'd it to see where it's at, but it rolls really nicely right down the tail boom. In flight, you'll notice that the helicopter looks incredibly solid. I really like that look of when you change the collective. It stops, it just looks like it hits a brick wall and reverses. So far with everything being real rigid, huge main shaft, nice big 10 millimeter head axle, everything super rigid, no play. It just makes for a really crisp flying helicopter. Weight-wise, it is very lightweight, and so depending on how you outfit it, it's obviously going to weigh different. I'm using a Scorpion 4235 520 kV motor, 200 amp ESC, Futaba HC 700 servos, CGY 760R, and Fully Max 5600 milliamp 12S stick pack batteries. It feels very positive. The feeling and everything about the helicopter is very fluid. I guess the best way to relate it feels a lot like power steering. And so far right now in the settings, I have absolutely everything in the CGY 760 default, except I've lowered the control authority just a little bit, and some of that is blade related. My Revo blades are a little bit more aggressive, so they reach a certain control rate faster. So lowering that down it just kind of makes it feel a little bit more linear. Other than that, there's not a whole lot to say other than you pick it up, you fly it, it pirouettes super straight. It's very fluid, like I said. Going through maneuvers, I think there's going to be things that in the past I have not liked doing because they feel a little bit clunky, or I feel like I'm fighting the helicopter, pushing it through it, and nobody likes that feeling. So obviously, just like everybody else, I tend to stay away from that and do the maneuvers where the helicopter feels like it's grooving. This helicopter grooves very well down low and on the deck. So I'm super excited to get out there and fly a little bit more smack than what I have in the past, but yet still fly big and fast. A few cosmetic options that I really like is that you can order black or white landing gear, and it's a low profile landing gear, so it looks real sleek, kind of like a race car. I really like that look, especially when you fly fast and big. The other thing is canopy is really well fitting to this airframe. It's small, it's compact, and it's really light. So as you can see, there's no excess canopy around the chassis, and it fits incredibly well around the swash plate. It wraps around the back, and there's magnets back here, and there's 4 canopy posts, and then one set of rubber dampened posts that the canopy rides on the inside. So far, I have found that it flies exactly the same with the canopy on as off. For some guys, that really matters. I know in the past, I used to like to fly with the canopy off just because the helicopter felt lighter. With this, I found flying with canopy on and off doesn't matter. I think that's a pretty good overview of what my thoughts of the XL Power are, and why I've decided to continue to start flying the model. I'm definitely looking forward to trying new stuff with it. It's super easy to work on. That fear of crashing is completely out of the back of my mind, because changing the tail boom, changing the landing gear, changing the head axle, changing the main shaft, all of it is within a matter of 1 to 2 bolts, and it's out, new one in. Since everything is so rigid, I have a feeling it's going to crash really well as well. Parts are affordable. The whole helicopter is affordable, which is incredibly appealing to try to push your flying and try new things and not have that constant fear that, oh, am I ever going to be able to get it back to the way it was? So I'm really looking forward to seeing everybody out at the flying fields. Hopefully can talk to you in person about the XL Power, can show you some different things. Obviously, me sitting here talking to video is one thing. When you see it in person, it's a completely different thing. I think one of the most exciting things for me is that I'll be flying a helicopter that I know everyone can be successful with just straight out of the box. The helicopter comes with servo arms that's going to create the exact same servo control geometry, exact same numbers that I'm flying on my own machine. There'll be no question of what numbers to help with when I'm out there supporting someone with an XL Power, because the setup will be very similar. I think that's a great thing. XL Power is creating a helicopter that out of the box you're going to be definitely successful with. I look forward to seeing everybody out at the flying field, talk to you in person, see the helicopter in person, and go out and get some flights in. We'll see everybody out there.